what have you hoped about, please? And would you check to see if Nikhil is online or trying to get in?
No, he's not in the waiting room either.
Well, he said he was going to show up. Okay. All right, so we are starting second chapter. So let's review where we are and what we've covered. So in our story, Lord Krishna has driven Arjuna between the two armies, and he says the first teaching, look, behold these two armies now arrayed. And Arjuna, man of action, he's doing his thing, he's a general, he's well trained, but when Krishna says, look, he ceases to use the modern term otherize the enemy. All of a sudden he sees, my gosh, these are the people I grew up with. There's my grandfather. There's my archery guru who's to be revered. Not only that, their army's bigger. And so he begins to have what we call a disintegrated personality. So his nature, his swadharma, is to be a soldier. This is what he does naturally. That takes him in one direction, fight. But then because he sees the people he cares for, even because of what's gone on, I'm not sure I want to do this. Second direction. Third direction, the intellect comes in. He starts to rationalize. The mind can always come up with reasons for doing just about anything. And the end result is paralysis. Sits down at the bottom of a chariot and he will not fight. Now his reasons, they have some validity. And when you and I come up with a rationalization, they usually make sense. All sorts of stupid things we find ourselves doing and we talk ourselves into. Now, he sits down and will not fight. Meaning for you and me. Remember, this is allegory. When you and I have this disintegration of the personality, the end result is paralysis. Should I take the job? Should I not take the job? Should I quit the job? Should I not quit the job? Should I get involved with this person or should I not get involved with the person? Should I break up with this person or should I not break up with the person? Should I buy this house or should I not buy this house? Any of you ever had these doubts? So what we don't have in this state is integration. We're not riding the horse in the direction it's going in life. The way we're designed to live is our nature, our swadharma impels us in one direction, and our heart is engaged in it, our emotional nature, and our intellect is free from doubt. And we have confidence to step forward in life. That's how we're designed. But Arjuna split. So let's start the second chapter and see what happens in our story. Sankhya Yoga, the yoga of knowledge, this chapter is called.
Should I go?
Yes, please start.
Sanjay Vacha Tam Tatha Kripaya Vishta Mashrupurna Kulikshanam Vishidantamidam Vakya Muvacha Madhusudanaha. Sanjaya said, to him who was thus overcome with pity and despondency, with eyes full of tears and agitated, Madhusudana spoke these words.
So now Krishna says to Arjuna, who's sitting there in the bottom of the chariot, do you think he's going to say, oh, you poor thing, I know you must just feel terrible. Here, have some tea. Let's see what Lord Krishna says in that. Go ahead.
Shri Bhagwan Vacha Kutastva Kashmalamidam Vishame Samupasthitam Anarya Jushtamaswarga Swargya Makirtir Karam Arjuna. The blessed Lord said, whence is this perilous condition come upon thee, this dejection, an Aryan-like, heaven excluding, disgraceful, O Arjuna?
Now, first of all, I want to talk a little bit about the English language because Swamiji will use it. Many of us who come from the West and we read Bible, King James Version, we see the these and the thous. What we don't understand is going back 400 years plus in England. English had a familiar and a formal form of the second person. Anybody here speak a Romance language like Spanish or French? So like in Spanish, you have usted, formal. You have tú, familiar. French, you have vous, formal. Tu, informal. In English, listen carefully. You is the formal. Thou is the informal. So as in most Romance languages, when you're talking to an elder, a superior, you use the formal. When you're talking to a friend, an intimate, you use the informal. Those of you who speak Spanish, which form is God addressed in the Christian Bible? Anybody know? Tú. God is addressed in the informal, the intimate, the personal. For example, if you read Romeo and Juliet, Romeo will say you to his father. He'll say thee and thou to Juliet. Swamiji follows that because it's in the Sanskrit that way. So notice here, Arjuna is addressing Krishna in the familiar. The exact opposite seems to be what a lot of modern English speakers think. They think, oh, that's God talk, thee and thou, very far away. That's not its linguistic intent. Is everybody clear on that? Okay, so don't be put off by that. So, what does Krishna say to him? He doesn't go, oh, you poor thing. He says, dude, why this wimping out? You're an effing soldier. Now, un-Aryan-like. Here, Arya here means brave, noble. That's what it literally means, is noble. Where's your nobility? Are you cowardly? So, what is this about? Remember, Guru is a principle. Swamiji used to say the external guru, the teacher, is a temporary psychological device. The true guru resides in your own heart. But it also shows up in the world and sometimes from the teacher, pushing our buttons. There's a story I love to say. A Western journalist once asked His Holiness the Dalai Lama who his most important guru was. His Holiness thought a moment and responded, Mao Zedong. A lot of you young people may not know who Mao was. Fang, tell us who Chairman Mao was.
I mean, he was the guy that basically brought communism to China and ended up suppressing Tibetans who wanted freedom and independence.
And genocide.
Yeah.
And there was part of what he did with things like the Cultural Revolution, all that stuff is systematically endeavored to suppress religious culture. Mm-hmm. So he's the one that vexed the Dalai Lama the most. So that was his teacher, because that's who poked him the most. Sometimes the guru in the person of the teacher will poke, but life does a pretty good job of it. So I'm going to give you a very important teaching. It is a spiritual axiom that if I am disturbed, no matter the cause, I'm the one with the klesha, the affliction, the dosha, the defect. I'm the one with the attachment. I'm the one with the expectation. I'm the one with the identification. Now, listen carefully. I am not saying that the world and its people are not frequently wrong. They are. That's as far as most of us ever get. And as long as I'm convinced, I'm upset and you did it to me. When we approach life from a victim mentality, we have no chance of finding any peace. Because my mind tells me to play whack-a-mole with the world. Fix this, if that doesn't work, then I gotta fix that, and then I gotta fix this, and then I gotta fix that, and the world just won't behave. That's how most people live. That's how most of us live. What does the yogi do? If I'm disturbed, if my heart moves, I'm the one with the attachment, the expectation, the identification. I need to do the work. This is axiomatic. Any thoughts or questions about this? Well, don't I have a right to be angry if I'm cheated? You can have anything you want. It's not about rights. But you don't have to lose your serenity if you're cheated. Another slogan that many people have: do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? Ever heard that one before? What does being right get you? We don't have to engage in fighting the world. So here Krishna takes the form of the guru spoken, meaning he knows Arjuna is really attached to being a general, to being a glorious winner of battles. He's a guy who wins. And he says, so you're going to be a wimp. Now, one of the things that people on the spiritual path can fall into, especially in the beginning, is we take up what I call phony renunciation or sour grapes renunciation. You all know the story of the sour grapes? I think it's from Aesop's Fables. There's a fox trying to get some ripe grapes, and he jumps up and tries to get them and jumps up and tries to get them, and he can't reach them. And he walks away disappointed, and he says they were probably sour anyway. Let's see. Let me give you a couple true life examples. So many of you know that I'm a retired professional musician, and I was a singer. And when I was very young, I wanted to be an opera singer, but I was plagued by performance anxiety. Oh man, stage fright. And this was about 1970, so I'm about 22. And I was living in San Diego, and there was an Italian restaurant, and they had young singers come in, and you could sing your aria or your song. So I went in, scared to death, nervous as hell. So of course I had a couple glasses of wine, got up, tried to sing my song. I think it was Amarilli Mia Bella was the song. My knees were shaking. Come off the stage, and I was such a wreck. And I said, I just can't do this. It's too painful. But my swadharma was to be a musician. I maybe for 2 or 3 weeks stopped singing. It came back. Eventually, I had to practice real renunciation, which is to learn how to get on stage and sing and move through the fear and the performance anxiety. Can you sense the difference in that? Can you sense the difference? So Arjuna is practicing phony renunciation. Let me give you another example of people who give something up out of an idea, and it's really not their nature. I used to have a meditation center in San Francisco on Market Street, and we used to have meditation every night at, I can't remember now, I think it was like 6 or 6:30. So this young fellow shows up, and we sat for like a half hour, 45 minutes in those days. I really can't remember, it's so long ago. And afterward, we were just talking, we had tea, and he was saying that 20 years prior, he had belonged to an ashram, this young 14-year-old Guru Maharaji, they call him. And in that ashram, everybody had to be a celibate. So he was there for a couple of years, and every time he meditated, all he thought about was the sex he wasn't having. 20 years later, comes into my meditation center, he sits in meditation, and what comes up? The sex he didn't have 20 years ago. It was stuck in his mind because he practiced not sublimation, but suppression. phony renunciation. It doesn't work. We have to live our lives according to our nature and learn to work through the fear, the attachments, the personal identification, etc. This is the manual labor. And we get our egos poked along the way. So Krishna is there as guru. Seems not very compassionate. What are you? A coward? You're un-Aryan-like. You're not being noble. What's the matter with you? Next verse.
Klaibyam smagama partha Naitattavyu papadyate Shudram hridaya dorbalyam Tyaktvotishta param tapaha. Yield not to impotence, O Partha, it does not befit thee. Cast off this mean weakness of the heart. Stand up, O param tapa, O scorcher of foes.
Swamiji's cleaned it up. Yield not to impotence. The word he uses is klaibyam. And almost nobody translates it. Because the best way to say it is, don't be a wuss. More literally, don't be the P word. It's a really, really negative epithet. That's what he says. I'm a stud. I'm Arjuna. Oh, no, you're not. You're a wuss. You're a whip. You're a, I don't say, not nice. Effeminate, we could say, kind of goes along with it. Nothing wrong with being effeminate or being a woman, but it's for Arjuna, it hits him where his ego is. He's identified, I'm stud. Really poking. Now it's so funny because when the guru does that, you'll watch the student will go, all this stuff starts to come up as people react. The guru usually just sits there, stands there, smiles. And then the student goes, you're terrible. Just kind of laughs. And life will do this. Remember, don't just think of the guru as a person. Life will poke us. And if we get triggered, it's a spiritual axiom that if I'm disturbed, no matter the cause, I'm the one with the klesha, the affliction. Now, frequently, where this triggering happens is in relationships, interpersonal relationships. If you want to know what your character defects are, just get in a relationship. It'll put Miracle Grow on.
Mm-hmm.
You'll find it at the workplace. You'll really find it in your family of origin. You know why our parents can push our buttons? They installed them. So here, Guru as principal, really poking at Arjuna. Going on.
Arjuna Vacha Katham Bhishmamaham Sankhe Dronam cha Madhusudana Ishubhi Pratiyotyami Puja Harvari Sudana. How, O Madhusudana, shall I in battle fight with arrows against Bhishma and Drona, who are fit to be worshipped, O destroyer of enemies?
Now, it's true. Your grandfather and your guru are fit to be worshipped, but he has totally lost sight of the larger picture, the Dharma that he's supposed to be upholding. See if I can use a modern example. So if you're a manager and you have an employee who's not doing the work, or let's say they have a drug or alcohol problem and they're not showing up to work, what's your duty as a manager?
You would tell them.
Hmm?
You would tell them to show up.
And if they don't and they have an excuse, what do?
Well, first you try to reason with them that others in the team will be carrying their workload and it's not fair to others. But if they don't change, then you fire them.
Yeah. Well, how can you hurt someone's feelings? How can you take away someone's livelihood? Is that a valid point? If you're a manager, what's your duty? You see what I'm getting at? Your duty is not to rescue people. Now, if you're a counselor at a rehab unit, you have a different duty. Arjuna has lost sight of his duty. Going on, next verse.
Guruna hatva himanubhavan shreyo bhoktum bhaksham apiha loke hartvartha kamam suguruni haiva bhunjiya bhogan rudhira pradiktan.
Excellent. Going on, read the English.
Better indeed in this world is to eat even the bread of beggary than to slay the most noble of teachers. But if I kill them, even in this world, all my enjoyments of wealth and desires will be stained with blood.
So interesting from the standpoint of the Sanskrit. When this double meter comes along, it means whoever is speaking is emotional. It's one of the things Vyasa, our poet, does to indicate heightened emotion. Now, here, Arjuna's revealing himself. What are his concerns? Notice he says it's better to eat beggary than
to slay the most noble of teachers.
But what will he, to read the whole thing again, I'm sorry.
Better indeed in this world is to eat even the bread of beggary than to slay the most noble of teachers. But if I kill them, even in this world, all my enjoyments of wealth and desires will be stained with blood.
Enjoyment of wealth and desires. That's what he really is. Okay, no blame. He's a worldly man. He wants to enjoy the world. He wants wealth and jewels, status. You and I have our worldly desires. We cannot flip them off like a light switch. Going back to my example of 1970 when I tried to give up singing, it didn't work. So he still wants wealth and enjoyment and glory. Better than I just eat, be a bhikshu and beg. Ain't gonna happen. This is all our self-rationalization. And most of us are prone to. I had a conversation with a person this past week who's in recovery, a drug addict. He's got quite a bit of clean time. And he was trying to argue with me how doing ayahuasca is going to be okay because it's spiritual. It's going to be a ceremony with a person, a white person, who's studied shamanism in Peru. And I trust him. Sounds pretty logical. Dude, you're an addict. What do you think is really going to happen if you do a drug? You're going to go down the rabbit hole. That's crazy. He had it all rationalized in his mind. A pretty rational argument. It was just crazy. He's not any too much different than you or me. This is what our minds do. Any thoughts on this? Going on. What number are we on now?
6.
Okay.
Na cheta dvidma kataranno gariyo yadva jayema yadivano jayeyu yaneva hatva na jijivishama te vasthita pramukhe dharta rashtra. I can scarcely say which will be better, that we should conquer them or that they should conquer us. Even the sons of Dhritarashtra, after slaying whom we do not wish to live, stand facing us.
So his priorities are all off. Maybe it would be better for the bad guys to run the country after all. And you know, we see this in American politics today. We see people who can rationalize the desire for power, for winning. And they lose sight of the larger picture. We're here to serve our constituents. We're here to further this experiment. Democratic Republicanism. Republican, Democratic, I don't know. Kind of got what we have. Very, very common. You and I lose sight of our real purpose. Going on.
Karpanya dosho pahat svabhava prichomi tvam dharma sammudha cheta yachreya syanishchitam bruhi tanme shishyasteham chadhimam tvam prapannam. My heart is overpowered by the taint of pity. My mind is confused as to duty. I ask thee, tell me decisively what is good for me. I am thy disciple. Instruct me, who has taken refuge in thee.
So here, Arjuna has the spiritual every person as the universal shishya, universal spiritual student does the one and first intelligent thing. He admits to himself and his teacher, I don't know. Help. I surrender to you. Teach me what I need to know. What happens for you and me is eventually our suffering is so bad, we are beaten into reasonableness. Frequently, true humility comes to us with a healthy portion of humble pie. We find that an ego-driven life, trying to get it all my way, doesn't work. Now, in the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, at the beginning of the second chapter, which is titled Sadhana Pada, the practice chapter or section, the first sutra of the second chapter is wonderful. I want to share it with you. Tapas swadhyayeshvara pranidhana kriya yoga. Tapas, austerities. Swadhyaya. In the Vedanta tradition, we normally think of swadhyaya literally means self-study, as after we've heard the scripture from the teacher, we go home and we review the scripture on our own. Patanjali views swadhyaya as psychological insight, knowing what my whole internal psychology is, being able to be honest with it, seeing what's coming up. If you want, spend the money, go to a psychotherapist. You'll find out what your issues are. Be a sincere and honest meditator. It's free. The stuff will come up. But then the third element, Ishvara Pranidhana, trustful surrender to God. Remember, I talked about Guru being the principal. So one of the things a yogi wants to do is turn their will, turn their life over to the care of God. I cannot tell you, it doesn't happen much anymore, but at times I would get people who would come to class and they'd want to hijack our satsang. They weren't here to learn anything. They wanted a platform for them to teach. And I usually politely say, go get your own satsang. They want to run their own thing. That's fine. Their own ideas. Arjuna is finished with that. He surrenders. Now I want to balance this with things you should look for and look out for in finding a teacher. You need to have a good BS detector. 3 things you want to watch out for, and if you see them, my suggestion is you go the other way. Does the teacher want to have sex with you? Does the teacher want all your money? Does the teacher want to micromanage your life? Run control issues? If those things are happening, thank you, sir, go the other way. But Jim, how do I surrender? How do I know I can trust that person? Well, if you're unwilling to trust at all, then you're fundamentally unteachable. You've got to be willing to take the risk of being disappointed. For some of us, it can take some time to surrender before you find out whether is this person a trustworthy person. If you can't trust yet, just see the teacher as a mouthpiece of the scriptures. Any thoughts on this? There's a very famous story of a Westerner who traveled all over the world looking for the perfect master. Finally, he comes to Baba Muktananda when he was here in Oakland at the City Yoga Center. And he asked Baba, are you the perfect master? I've looked all over the world for the perfect teacher. And Baba Muktananda responds, funny you should say that. I've been looking for the perfect student. Are you he? The fellow was a bit disappointed and turned and walked away. Baba said, come on back. Maybe we could work something out. Now, yes, it's important to surrender to God, to the teacher. But success in the spiritual life is entirely due to the degree of the qualifications of the student. Factors such as time and place, and I would even add the guru, while important, are fundamentally secondary. If you have mumukshutva, the burning desire for liberation, and you're earnest about it, a rock will enlighten you. And if you don't have the qualifications of a fit student, Krishna himself could show up and say, mind like a brick, nothing I can do. Any thoughts on this before we go on? All right, so Arjuna has come to the point where he surrenders to Lord Krishna. Next verse.
Nahi prapashyami mamapnudyada yachokamuchoshana mindriyanam avapya bhumavasapatna mrutham rajyam suranam api charipatyam. I do not see that it would remove the sorrow that burns up my senses, even if I should attain prosperous and unrivaled dominion on earth, or even lordship over the gods.
So here Arjuna has come to the place where he sees, I'm suffering. And even getting cash and prizes isn't going to help. When we identify the basic human condition, life, the way most of us live it, is dukkha. suffering. That's Buddha's first noble truth. And when we see that, we go out and we do all the material or extroverted things. I call it the cash and prizes. We are like a person at a banquet with a thorn in their throat. Got all this good stuff, but I still can't enjoy. So that's where he is. What's the answer when we're in this state? When we hit a spiritual bottom, borrow a term from the recovery programs. Next verse.
Sanjay Vacha Eva Muktva Rishikesham Gudakesha Parantapa Na Yotsya Iti Govinda Muktva Tushni Babhuvaha. Sanjaya said, having spoken thus to Rishikesha, Gudakesha, the destroyer of foes, he said to Govinda, I will not fight, and become silent, and became silent.
So Arjuna makes the decision. I will not fight. Because of my sorrow, because of my confusion, because of my attachments and fears, I will not fight. Is that 10?
9.
9. All right, number 10.
Tamu Vacha Rishikesha Prahasinne Praha Sanniva Bharata Sena Yorubhayor Mathe Vishidantamidam Vachaha. To him who was despondent in the midst of the two armies, Rishikesha, as if smiling, O Bharata, spoke these words.
That was 10?
Yeah.
Okay. So, starting with verse 11, we will get the beginning of the actual teaching. All this has been preparatory. Now, there is a literary style in scripture that we need to be aware of. In the Hindu scriptures, frequently, not always, the highest teaching, the subtlest teaching, the most concise teaching is given first. Chances are most of us miss it. Then it's broken down bit by bit. Now, chapter 2 is the chapter that is frequently suggested to people who've experienced the death of a loved one. And it's hard teaching. Let's hear what Krishna says in the 11th verse, the first teaching.
Shri Bhagwan Vacha Ashochan Anvesho Anve Ashochananvashocastvam Pragyavadascha Bhashase Gatasuna Gatasuncha Nanushocita Shochanti Pandita. The Blessed Lord said, you have grieved for those that should not be grieved for, yet you speak words of wisdom. The wise grieve neither for the living nor for the dead.
Oh, the wise grieve neither for the living nor the dead. Say that to someone who's just lost a husband or a wife or a parent or a child. and it seems like cruelty itself. Now, one of the things Krishna's going to say later, it's very true. We don't unsettle the minds of the ignorant with the truth. What does he mean by that? We have to meet people where they are. If you have a friend who's not a deep yogi and they've experienced a significant loss, of course you meet them with compassion. Of course you meet them holding sacred space. You don't say, you grieve for whom you should not grieve. The wise grieve neither for the living or the dead. That's cruelty. So we have to nuance this. So Krishna has said this, and it's a bit of a shock to Arjuna. Now, what we're going to enter into now in the next section is what I call spiritual anthropology. Many of us, even those of us raised as Hindus, have misunderstanding about this, and we get confused. So let's talk about what a human being is. We have to understand, like an iceberg, only one part, a very small part is visible. The vast majority is invisible. It's the same for you and me. First, we have the stula sharira. Stula means gross. Sharira means body. Gross here doesn't mean like the young people say, oh, that's gross. No, it doesn't mean that. It means a lower vibratory level. So like the low notes on a piano are grosser than the high notes. Ice is grosser than water. Water is grosser than steam. Steam is subtler than water. Water is subtler than ice. You understand the use of the words gross and subtle here? Yes?
Mm-hmm.
So the grossest level of our manifestation, the stula sharira, is the physical body. And he's going to go into what is the dharma, the destiny, the nature of a physical body. Now we go into the realm of the invisible, into what's called the sukshma sharira. Sukshma means subtle. So we have a subtle body. What is the subtle body? It has the 5 organs of action, the 5 organs of perception. It has the mind, it has the intellect, and it has the ego sense. What do you mean, Jim? You run around in a dream in your subtle body. So can you walk and talk and do all that kind of stuff in a dream? Those are the 5 organs of action. Can you hear, taste, touch, smell, etc. in a dream? Yeah, those are the organs of knowledge. Can you have emotions in a dream? Yes. You have thoughts in a dream? Yes. And you have an ego. When you dream, you are identified with the dream body. When you're in the waking state, that ego is identified with the physical body. Now listen carefully. When you have an out-of-the-body experience, when you have a near-death experience, people will experience being in the subtle body. If you read stories, The Inquirer, or you've heard people lecture, maybe you yourself have had a near-death experience. Many people have the experience that all of a sudden they're 20 feet above, they're looking down at their body, and there's the medics with the paddles restarting their heart, and then there's detached, and then all of a sudden they come back into the physical body with all that pain. What was outside of the physical body? The subtle body. It is the subtle body that reincarnates, that goes from physical incarnation to physical incarnation. Now, we have a karana sharira, a causal body. This is the collection of all our unconscious vasanas that, along with the subtle body, comprises what we call the jiva, the individuality, the transmigrating soul. Now, at the core of your being is the self, which is like space, which is never born and never dies and never really even incarnates. It is like this. So I have a glass of water here. The physical body is like the glass. The transmigrating soul is like the water in the glass. The self is like the space in the glass. What is reincarnation? If I were to get another glass and pour the water from one glass into another, that's reincarnation. But take some more. Notice what happens to the space in the glass. Space, glass space. There's room space. A magic trick. You see the space in the glass? What happened to the space when I moved the glass? Oh, I'm going to get back in the glass. Is that what happens? If I break the glass, what happens to the space in the glass? Is the space in the glass, or is the glass in space? Are you in the body, or is the body in you? What do I mean by this? Do you incarnate into the dream? Who had a dream recently? Anybody? Yes? No?
Yes.
Who was it over here? Fang?
Yep.
What was your dream, dear?
I was chasing this dog down a flight of apartment stairs and it ran into the garden.
All right, that's fair enough. So you had a dream body.
Yes.
Did you incarnate into the dream body? Were you in the dream, or was the dream in you?
The dream was in me.
Yes, but it sure felt like you were in the dream body, didn't it?
Yep.
Seemed really real until you woke up.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Listen carefully. In this waking state, you are not in the body. You are not even in the subtle body. They are in you. Now, as we move forward in the second chapter, in this section, Krishna is going to teach at 3 levels. It's braided together. It's not first idea, second idea, third idea. This is why you need a teacher or a good commentary. So he's going to talk about what happens to the physical body, the stula sharira. And he's going to talk about what happens to the subtle body, or the antakarana, the inner equipment, or the jiva, the sense of individuality, the transmigrating soul. And then he's also going to talk about our essential nature. So this is foundational. Where are we supposed to identify? We identify with the self. With this in mind, let's go on. Next verse.
न त्वेवाहं जातु नासं न त्वं नेमे जनाधिपा न चैव न भविष्यामः सर्वे वयमतः परम्. It is not that at any time in the past, indeed was I not, nor were you, nor these rulers of men, nor verily shall we all ever cease to be hereafter.
So Krishna starts off second part of the teaching from the highest. There was never a time when you are not. And remember, when Krishna talks about himself, he's talking about the self. He's talking about the self in you. Now, let's see if we can go to our direct experience here. When you were a child, you had a little body. You have a photo album. You can look in and see pictures of you as a 5-year-old, and a 10-year-old, and a teenager, as an adult. Some of us are heading a little further, our golden years. I joke with people, oh yeah, that person knew me 40 pounds ago. But when you stay away from a mirror, and for those of us who are a little older, sit still so nothing hurts, you don't feel any different than you did as a kid, do you? You have been the witness of the changes. Science tells us we completely recreate all new cells every 7 years. If you're over 21, you have died and been reborn 3 times. But throughout all of that process, did you ever cease to be you? What Krishna is saying is, even when the physical body drops off, other people will say, oh, they are so good and I miss them so much. You will never cease to be. It is like when you go to the barber shop or the beauty salon. Right now, your hair, you're attached to your hair, literally. You go to the barber shop, hair falls to the floor of the beauty parlor or the barber shop. Are you on the floor going, oh, I've been cut off, I've been cut off? No. You go, oh my God, it's gotten so great. I tell you, when the body drops off, not only will the subtle body still be, look at that down there, the self in you will never be touched. Now, this is not only true about you, it's true about everyone. I have a friend who's now a psychologist, and he's had what he feels is an incarnation memory. He thinks he's a reincarnation of the psychologist Carl Rogers. He was born a time, I can't remember exactly, after Carl Rogers died. I used to say, very likely could be. But what is it that died? The meat lump, the stula sharira. What is it that reincarnated? Let's assume he's right. The subtle body. But the self was never born and does not die. The space in the glass is never touched. If the glass gets cracked, nothing happens to the space. If I drink the water and put in lemonade, nothing happens to the space. In fact, space is omnipresent, everywhere present. And so are you. This is the highest teaching of Vedanta. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. All this is verily Brahma. It's all God. That means you. So it gets very pointed and direct in the highest knowledge very fast in the second chapter. So it's 8 o'clock. We need to stop here. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha. Hari Om. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.